From the outside, the party looked fine. Paper streamers sagged from the ceiling fan. A grocery store cake leaned slightly to one side, the frosting already soft from the heat of too many bodies in the living room. Someone had put on music that was just loud enough to feel cheerful without demanding attention. It was my daughter's 8th birthday, and for a few minutes, she was simply a child in a paper crown, sticky, fingered, and proud. I stood near the counter, watching for shifts. I'd learned to do that young. Monitor the room, anticipate tone changes, smooth things over before they became sharp. My parents were already on their second drinks. My dad was in one of his expansive moods, telling stories that bent themselves around him, drawing laughs that came a half-second too late. I told myself to relax. I told myself I was projecting old memories onto a harmless afternoon. Then my dad clinked a fork against his glass. "All right," he said, smiling broadly, already enjoying whatever was coming next. "One more gift." He held up an envelope, plain white, my daughter's name written in his familiar slanted handwriting. She looked at me first, checking for permission. I nodded. He liked being watched. It was part of the ritual. She tore it open carefully. Inside was a folded card, homemade marker bleeding through the paper. She read it silently at first. Her smile hesitated, not gone, just paused like a buffering screen. Then my dad read it out loud. "Award for the least pretty grandchild," he announced, voice theatrical. "Just kidding," Bill's character, right? Laughter broke out. Not everyone, but enough. It wasn't raucous. It was the kind of laughter that had filled my childhood, reflexive, trained, a signal of allegiance. I saw my mother's mouth curve automatically before her eyes caught up. I saw my cousin glance down at her phone. I saw my daughter look at the room, confused, trying to understand whether this was a game she'd failed to learn the rules of. Something in me went very still. This wasn't a joke gone wrong. This was a line I recognized perfectly, a test dressed as humor. If I laughed, it would be filed away as permission. If I protested, I'd be accused of overreacting, of being too sensitive, of ruining the mood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I stepped forward, took the card from my daughter's hands, and ripped it in half. The paper tore louder than I expected. "No," I said. Just that then, because silence demanded a little more. "We don't speak to children like that." The room went quiet, but not transformed. My dad stared at me, half amused, half annoyed. My mother inhaled sharply, preparing to mediate. Someone shifted in their chair. "Oh, come on," my dad said. "It's a joke." I met his eyes. "It's not funny," I said. "And it stops now." I reached for my daughter's hand. She squeezed back, hard, for a moment. That was it. A standoff, familiar and exhausting. I could already feel the aftertaste of what would come later, the calls, the accusations, the reframing of events where I became the problem again. Then a chair scraped against the floor. Slowly, deliberately, my grandfather stood up. He was 72, his movements careful from years of manual labor that had left his joints unreliable but his posture intact. When he stood, people noticed. They always had. He didn't look at my dad right away. He looked at the table, at the cake, at my daughter still clutching her crown with her free hand. "I remember," he said, voice steady, "when we used to say things like that and call it humor." No one laughed this time. He turned to my dad. "You learned that from me," he said plainly. "And I was wrong." My dad's face shifted, not anger yet, but surprise. This was not part of the script. We thought toughening kids up made them strong. My grandfather continued. What it made was quiet, afraid, mean when they didn't need to be. He looked around the room, making eye contact, not accusatory, just factual. That little girl doesn't need to earn her place by swallowing insults. Then he said the thing that changed everything. "If you talk to her like that again," he said to my dad, "you won't see her. And if you ask why, I'll be the one who answers." The authority in his voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It came from decades of being deferred to, from a lifetime of deciding when lines were crossed. No one argued. No one joked. My dad opened his mouth, closed it. My mother stared at the floor. The laughter that had come so easily minutes earlier had nowhere to go now. I took my daughter into the kitchen, away from the room. She didn't cry. She just asked quietly, "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I said. "You didn't." That was the only explanation she needed. After that day, things didn't explode. They eroded. My parents tried to regain footing with apologies that weren't quite apologies. "We didn't mean it that way. You know how he is." For the first time, those phrases didn't land anywhere. The ground had shifted. My grandfather meant what he said. He didn't raise his voice again. He didn't have to. When my parents hinted at jokes, in future conversations, he redirected. When they complained about me being distant, he said, "She's protecting her child. Full stop. Word spread. Not dramatically, no family-wide email, no public shaming. Just quiet recalibration. Invitations slowed. People stopped laughing along. Old stories lost their punch when no one echoed the laugh. My parents' social world had been built on a certain charm, a shared understanding of humor that punched down and called it bonding. Without an audience, it withered. They blamed me, at first. Then circumstances. Then each other. I didn't correct the narrative. I didn't need to. Healing, I learned, wasn't a clean arc. I still woke some nights replaying the moment I hadn't intervened sooner. I still felt the familiar tug to make things easier, smoother, less uncomfortable. But when I watched my daughter move through rooms now unafraid, unmeasured, I understood something had ended. Not cruelty entirely. Not family conflict. But the assumption that harm could hide behind laughter forever. That assumption died at a birthday table, with a torn piece of paper and an old man finally saying what he should have said decades earlier. The family didn't recover the way it had been. And that was the point.